The aftermath as people flood into the street during a huge fire in a nightclub in Bucharest 5 years ago. Broadcast for a few days right around the world. In Romania itself, though, the resulting scandal erupting into massive political upheaval. The country's prime minister himself resigning within a week. The fire broke out as the metalcore band Goodbye to Gravity performed in a nightclub in Bucharest, the Colectiv. Pyrotechnics used by the band set fire to flammable soundproofing, and it quickly spread to the ceiling, causing a huge blaze. Up to 400 people desperately tried to flee. A stampede, but all hemmed in with just one exit. Outside the club, panic as people tried to help those injured.
They took around 20 people in the first ambulance. There wasn't much room, but we tried to squeeze people in. We told them to take more because there were so many burn victims. They weren't doing anything. We kept bringing injured people to this area where the ambulances were.
I just went into the entrance. I saw a few people lying on the floor. I slapped their faces. Some woke up, others didn't.
We went into the club and tried to save as many people as we could. We even dragged out dead bodies.
On the day itself, at least 27 people were killed, but the numbers more than doubled over the coming weeks and months, partly due to the country's dilapidated health system, filthy hospitals, disinfectant diluted by the manufacturers to save money. At the club itself, scandal of the low-quality flammable soundproofing used and accusations that the club's owners skimped on security measures to save money. As thousands of people took to the streets to condemn the corruption, the country's then Prime Minister Victor Ponta, already facing trial for corruption himself, quit. But 5 years on, has what happened made any difference to Romania? Well, Nadia Bletry, Eric de Laverne revisit the Romanian nightclub scandal for France 24.
Mihai Gracia is a survivor. 5 years ago, he was filming the concert when the nightclub caught fire. Severely burned, he spent several weeks caught between life and death. Every 30th of October in Bucharest, he remembers the dead. Some of them were his friends.
I don't feel very well being here, because when I'm looking at these places, I still see some of those scenes, because there had been a lot of ambulances here. It was like a nightmare.
More of an earthquake than a nightmare, because the fire shook the country to its foundations. Incompetence, bribery, the club should never have opened, but the scandal didn't stop at the doors of a concert hall with poor safety standards. The Romanian state, rotten with corruption, was incapable of looking after its injured. The families are still haunted by one question: how did we end up here? Laurențiu Istrate lost his 22-year-old son. He died in hospital after the fire, along with 34 others. But Laurențiu is still convinced that his son could have been saved.
It's the responsibility of the state, of the authorities. His life was very fast cut by this system. I will never forget. The state didn't open any judge to see what happened in the hospital.
They're going to put up pictures of the victims on the walls of the court. We can go and come back here afterwards.
For Mihai Gracia, as for the other survivors, the fight for the truth that began the day after the tragedy is far from over.
These pictures are the pictures of all the victims who died after Colectiv. It's a happening, it's a happening, but a meaningful happening. A message to the Romanian justice: speed up the process. Speed up the process, because truth is so important in this case, and truth is so important for the whole country, not only for the victims and the survivors and their families.
But 5 years later, many wonder whether the lessons of Colectiv have been learned. Local officials, the club owners, the pyrotechnicians, all of those responsible for the fire were sentenced to prison. But they're still walking free, pending appeals. Like the former district mayor, re-elected in September, in spite of his 8.5-year prison sentence.
Please come in.
This morning, Adrian Albu is meeting his lawyer. As a survivor of Colectiv, who watched his own sister die, giving up the fight for justice is simply out of the question.
In 2 days, we'll have a new hearing, and that's when we'll present our evidence.
The 3rd week, my sister died in a hospital. We expect the people that are responsible for her death to go to jail.
Justice cannot be done to the dead. They are beyond justice. The justice now is aimed at ensuring that something like this doesn't happen anymore.
And yet,
every club, restaurant, shop in Romania operates without fire prevention measures. Has happened in Colectiv can happen any day.
at the Bucharest Court of Appeal, proceedings have begun again.
Right now, the defendants are taking the stand. After that, it will be the prosecutor's turn, and then ours.
For Adrian Albu and the others, the goal is simple. Finally, to see those responsible punished so that there can be no more collectives.
We have to understand that it's the first case where public authorities in Romania, they were found guilty for not doing their job, basically, for breaking the law.
We didn't have any treatment in the country, and the people that should have been transferred outside, because there is a European, how do you call that?
Directive?
Directive that said in case of emergency in one country, that country should appeal to the other countries for help. And we didn't in that case. In Bataclan, 1 week after that, France appealed for help.
Adrian Albu wants to go further. He wants the health system put on trial, a system which he believes is responsible for the deaths of dozens of those injured at Colectiv, including his sister. To what extent was the state responsible? Razvan Lutac is one of the 3 investigative journalists at the Sports Gazette newspaper, which revealed the dark side of the Colectiv affair.
Oh, no.
The paper quickly noticed that several of the fire's victims died in hospital, not as a direct result of their injuries, but due to complications linked to infections acquired in hospital.
In December 2015, we had our first source who told us, okay, you are writing about the infections, but you know why do you have a lot of infections in hospitals? Because the disinfectants are diluted. It was something science fiction for us, so it was pure science fiction.
So the Sports Gazette started investigating the management of the city's hospitals and the pharmaceutical industry. They discovered that Hexipharma, Romania's biggest antiseptics producer, had for years been supplying the country with watered-down disinfectant without any state supervision, and it didn't stop there.
We also found the contracts and their disinfectants in Bulgaria, and they also sold these disinfectants to the Romanian army in Afghanistan. It seems silly, but it is true.
Scandal after scandal pushed Romanians out onto the streets to demand the resignation of the government, united by one message: corruption kills. And yet, 5 years after Colectiv, little has changed as far as health is concerned. Camelia Roiu, an anaesthetist in a severe burns unit, is one of the few professionals who dares to speak out. And it's not without risks.
Even the porters at the hospital report back on who I speak to and what I do.
Today, her conclusion is clear.
There've only been cosmetic changes. We've gone from 10 beds in the whole country for severe burns victims to 23. And the invisible infections are still there. There have been no significant changes.
On the 14th of November, a fire broke out in a coronavirus hospital in the northeast of the country. It was probably caused by a short circuit. 10 patients died. In 30 years, the Romanian state has only built one hospital in the whole country. It will have taken Carmen Uscatu and Oana Gheorghiu just 3 years to build their own in Bucharest. In a matter of months, the two volunteers have raised 30 million euros in private donations to build this centre for children with cancer. They became national heroes. They and their teams have different ideas about care.
For the first time in Romania, we'll have beds for parents.
It's for the mothers, because at the moment, in Romania's hospitals, mothers have to sit on a chair all night. Florentin, help me. I can't reach. Okay. In Romania, the rooms are too small, and not every room has its own bathroom. So in the Marie Curie Hospital, there are 31 beds, so that means 31 kids and their mothers have to share just 2 toilets. Conditions like that mean that these children just don't have the same chances of survival as children in Western Europe.
The women are blunt. If 2 ordinary people are able to build a hospital, then the government should be able to do it too. But the health budget is less than 6% of GDP, the lowest in the whole of the EU. The authorities have other priorities.
From here you can see the cathedral that the Romanian state has given so much money to. Several times, Bucharest City Hall has handed over millions of euros for its construction. They're building lots of churches, which may not be a bad thing, but you also need to build hospitals and schools.
Carmen Uscatu and Oana Gheorghiu have just launched a new fundraising effort to build a second hospital. And for them, there's no denying that the Colectiv tragedy has given an impetus to civil society. It's a conviction shared by Adrian Albu, who was recently elected as a municipal councillor. Today, he's meeting the new team at the town hall of Bucharest's 2nd district before the inauguration ceremony. He's the only survivor of the Colectiv fire to have gone into politics. His goal? To transform a society that is still influenced by its communist inheritance.
I'm not sure you could understand because you didn't have a totalitarian regime to oppress you for 45 years. In order to understand such a thing, you should try to live in the conditions from now when you have restrictions and multiply those by 10. And that was Romania for 45 years.
The mayor too is new to politics.
Most of us here came into politics because of Colectiv.
Why?
Well, because I think that our generation realized that without getting into politics, events like that could happen again and again and again. We should change things, and we should be a new generation of better politicians.
In the municipal elections in September, a generation of young politicians like Adrian emerged, often from the voluntary or the private sectors.
I swear to respect the constitution and the law of the land and to devote myself to the interests of the people of Bucharest's 2nd district.
Vlad Voiculescu, the newly elected second in command at Bucharest City Hall, has come to congratulate the new team. He's convinced that Romania is ready to turn a page.
We're going to have a mandate of 4 years in the local administration. I guess we're going to be able to do some real changes around here. It's 30 years after the Romanian Revolution, and I guess it's the first time when Romanians are not so much afraid anymore of being free.
And will this new generation manage to avoid a repeat of the Colectiv tragedy? Will it force the state to better protect its citizens in memory of the victims of the fire, ensure that their deaths were not in vain?
Nadia Bletry and Eric Zillaverne revisiting the Romanian nightclub scandal for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. Don't forget, of course, you can catch it and all the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. Thanks for watching. More news coming up very shortly.